All right, there we go. Okay, we got a couple of topics tonight. Steve's going to do the first one. Let me quickly go over the agenda if I can right here. So I can get to it. That is, we have a short topic that Steve was going to do last time, but we ran quite long on a very good meeting with on Telescopius. We got a few minutes on that, and then Devin's going to take us through the generalized hyperbolic stretch tool. And what I see of that is I think he has an example he's going to use, but we all ought to add in what you've experienced and the techniques you've learned to date. I've got some trial and error stuff, and I've got some stuff that I tried to pick up from Adam Block, and all of you, I'm sure, have had the experience that's worth sharing, because it's kind of a complex tool but it sure does make a difference. So having said that, Steve, you want to take over for your topic, and then we'll get into Devin here after that.
All right. I have a lot of windows open, don't I? Okay. Yeah, can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. This is going to be a quick talk. I've been very interested in these Dr. Robin Glover talk. He's a CEO of SharpCap and Astrophotography.
What is that?
Posted his talk, and it really explains. He just says conventional wisdom is a bunch of hooey. Here's the science of exposure length, of whether or not, when you need to cool your camera, whether will it do any good in light polluted skies and that type of thing. So what I encourage you to do, and I'm going to post this in the Slack channel, is to just watch these if you have a chance. And the second talk is, he ran out of time at the first talk. He went too long. So he finished that in his studio at home. And he talks a lot about gain here, which I know very little about. But those of us who have CMOS cameras, that'll be very interesting. But so what I want to talk about his section where he's talking about thermal noise and how if you have a lot of thermal noise, but your light pollution is more, then you don't need to correct for your thermal noise, because the pollution, the electrons are there messing with your image, giving you a lot of noise. And just briefly, we all know that a photon hits a camera chip, an electron is emitted, and that electron is analog data that is eventually converted into digital data, I think by way of voltage. But there is another element of noise we need to worry about, or electrons, and that's cameras heat the sensor. And the hotter the camera is, the more electrons are emitted and the more noise. So astrophotographers, we like some really good signal to noise ratio, and it's good to know where your noise comes from and how to prevent it. So what Dr. Glover said is, if the electrons from the light pollution exceeds the electrons from how your camera can cool, then it's moot. It does no good. It does no good to cool your camera if the light pollution is already messing with your image. And he provides, you can buy his software at SharpCap that does all these calculations for you, but he also provides this website free of charge right here. And I recommend everybody go there and play around. So I just put some information in my backyard. I have an SQM meter at 17.97 that rounded to 18. These things auto-populate no matter what you put in here. Like if you put 8 in here, that will populate and that will populate. And then your telescope has F ratio. and then you get your camera pixel size, quantum efficiency. And for my color camera, my sky electron rate in my backyard is 4.28 electrons pixels squared, I think. So the point is, he takes 10% of that, which is 0.428, and I'm plotting this on a dark current graph you can get from the OEM. So I have a Zoe camera, and I found this on the website. So basically, this is the electron noise at certain temperatures. So obviously, the less temperature you have, the less noise. And look where I am in my backyard. I could put a blast furnace on my camera and heat it up, and I'd have the same amount of noise. I get zero benefit of cooling in my backyard. But what if I go to Burton Sugar Farm? Well, it is Bortle 4, and you see I'm starting to get some benefit. But, the conventional wisdom is to be at -10, -20.
Mhm.
Well, even at Burton's with my camera, I could be +15 and be fine. And my camera's not a very good one compared to others. I'm going to actually talk about Devin's camera in a second. But you see how this is a curve? So, I mean, when you get right down here to like 0 degrees, you get no more benefit of cooling for this particular camera. And so here's Devin's situation. I think y'all remember he shot that Crescent Nebula. Well, he had some really good skies, 4.5, and he has a really good camera and some really good narrowband filters. And his sky electron rate was 0.03. So if you plot his, you see he's more linear. He could have been at 0 degrees in his situation and been fine, even though conventional wisdom says be down here at -20. Well, if he's over at Grand Teton National Park, it might be good to be at -20, but in the skies that we typically run into, it's kind of interesting. You just don't need to do it. And just quickly talking about exposures, Devin, how long did you, I think you did like 600-second exposures. Do you
Yeah,
remember?
with that one, that was my first attempt to do 600-second exposures.
Okay, good. So here's the formula. This C is really an error rate. And if you go to this talk I told you to watch, he explains even what this is. It's another formula, but he says you can just put 10 in there when in doubt. And then you take the read noise from his camera, which is 1.2 squared, and you multiply it by the sky electron rate. And for his narrowband filters, 480 seconds was a good move. But anything more than that may be counterproductive, is Dr. Glover's point. You certainly don't get any benefit from it. And the risk of satellite trails and all of that just kind of makes you want to dial it back a bit.
When you say don't get any benefit, what's that mean? I mean,
Well,
in terms of noise, or in terms of you're collecting data beyond the 480.
But if you listen to his talk, he's saying that data you're collecting is worthless at a certain point based on this formula.
Unless you overexpose the stars or something. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, because he does in SharpCap, he does have an automatic way of doing this, where you characterize your camera, and then you take a picture. And
he said he quote hired to protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems.
Okay, and then let's see.
Do exactly what they were doing. They were paying for protection.
Okay, somebody needs to mute their
TV. Yeah.
I was curious about Ann's situation real quickly to finish this up at Rhodes College, and basically her sky electron rate is 1.58. When she has her narrowband filters, she can get some pretty long exposures if she wants, 693 seconds. But this is the thing that shocked me is luminance, right? If she has her luminance plugged in, 14 seconds according to Dr. Glover, is like anything more than that. In other words, he'd say, I prefer you take 14-second exposures, lots of them, just lots of them.
We need a device on the inside.
Meryl, you're the host, so if you
Yeah,
click on participants,
How do I-
then you'll be
how do
able
I-
to mute Keith.
Just
How
says
do I
he
do
does.
that?
Click on participants at the bottom of the
Okay.
screen,
Okay, I got that. Mute
and
all.
you'll see Keith, well, or mute all, but then you'll have to let Steve.
Okay, I'll let Steve.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So I mean 14 seconds. But with RGB, she can do a little bit better. 41 seconds is what he would recommend. And he would just say anything beyond that is not recommended and may even, Meryl, he said it may be counterproductive.
Well, yeah, I went through the characters that I used it on the QHY 600 color camera, and it was like 90 seconds is the best I could do, because you start saturating the stars, and that's where I think you get into it's counterproductive.
Well, no, he did it in the concept of noise,
Why I don't
because noise, sky pollution rate, sky electron rate is a key factor in this formula. And
So-
he's saying because that noise is there, you're not going to get strong enough signal anyways. That, I mean, you can listen to his talk. That's the purpose of this, is to
yeah.
stimulate this conversation now, and everybody just kind of look into it. Because we clearly, I think it was 2 hours worth of talk, so we clearly don't have time to deal with all of his factors. But he's very adamant that we're overkilling on our conventional wisdom.
So I guess like the slope of the curve is kind of flat as you go out more time.
Yes,
I must.
but he would say the more. Another thing, the next thing I'm going to study is how long. Why is 20 hours the conventional wisdom? And there's probably going to be an answer to that.
Total exposure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's the point that he was doing. There's science behind all this that you can look at and answer questions. It was really a fascinating talk. Highly recommend it.
Was there any mention of any drawbacks to cooling, even if you're below that line on the graph that you're showing?
The only drawback he talked about was, let's say it's 4 a.m. and you're running out of battery. Well, if you cooled at half the temperature, you would have made it. So his only thing was power. Now, sometimes in Memphis, I can only cool 20 degrees ambient. So let's say it's 90. I can, I can get it to 70.
But doesn't it still affect your darks, where if you can cool it to the same temperature every time, you don't have to worry with taking your darks every night? A different.
Right. So what I'm going to do now going forward is I'm going to dump my -10 degree darks and do 0 degree darks based on his advice, and just move on from there.
Keep a library of them.
Yeah, keep a library, because I have run into power issues at 3 a.m. before. Second night, I forgot to charge the battery.
So you're just gonna
You want your darks to be at the same temperature as your lights.
Right.
Like at roads, if I usually get the darks during the next day, but if it's hot like today, I'll never get that camera to -20.
Right.
So now I don't have to.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, Dan, I looked for data on your camera. If I could get a dark current chart, I could tell you, what temperature to cool it. But I couldn't find any. I scanned the internet.
It's not a big deal. We have no power issues because it's permanent. So
Mhm.
it's just if it's too hot, we can't get low enough.
Yeah. But,
Well, I think we can get low enough based on what you said.
yeah. I suspect you'd be fine at 0 degrees Celsius, or maybe even 10.
Okay. Any other questions for Steve? Okay, Devin, I think you're up.
All right, how do I take over?
I
Share screen at the top.
says share screen.
Oh, it might be at the bottom.
It's at the bottom on
Green
mine.
button.
Oh, yep.
There he goes.
We good?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to attempt to take you guys through GHS here. I've watched a few YouTube videos trying to figure this stuff out myself. It's a little bit of a complicated process when you first start with it. I tried to watch some of Adam Block's stuff, but he gets very technical, and that is just not my realm. I have a very general understanding of how this is all working, so I can at least share that with you guys. I have to admit, I used to be just an STFer. I just stretch my images with STF. To me, as a new astrophotographer, look fantastic. But I've got some examples here to show you guys. After using GHS, it's changed my workflow completely. So I'll start off with my Crescent Nebula. This is just a stretch I did with STF. I mean, to me, it was looking pretty good initially, but after watching some videos and messing around, you can really see the difference between the two. So this one over here on the right side, that's the GHS stretch. And you can really see the difference in your dark tones, lights, midtones.
Yeah. Wow. Look how you pulled out the nebula.
Huge difference.
Yeah, that was great.
You kept the highlights and you pulled out so much more data.
Yeah. So my workflow getting up to this point for both of the images or any image I'm working on is completely the same. I do a dynamic crop, DBE. I like to do the manual one. I like to have a little more control than the automatic. And then I combine my images, do a plate solve, SPCC. And then I do NXT and blur exterminator too. And then at that point is when I get into the stretching. And so my brief understanding, the STF, it's a linear stretch. And so that affects when you're stretching it, it affects the entire curve. And you really don't have that manual control of the tones that you're trying to change. Whereas GHS is a nonlinear stretch, and you can choose the very specific points of your image that you're trying to manipulate. So that's how you're able to get the better tones. And I feel like those images just pop more with the GHS stretch. Okay, so to get to GHS, you just go into scripts here, down to utilities, EFG.
While you're doing that, Devin, I'm curious, did you ever use the easy processing stretch?
I did not. I never got into that.
I'm curious. I know that's what I currently use, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn GHS, but I can't get it to look as good. But I was just curious if you had any comps on it.
Oh, no.
So,
you know,
I know
with
GHS is the way to go, but until
Yeah.
I make it better than the easy suite, it's like, I can't jump
Right.
over that.
This GHS, it's just been a lot of playing around with it and trying to figure out what each of the sliders does to the image. I mean, I've kind of found my little groove here to. Ooh, this is new. I'm not sure what that is. Okay. I think this just got updated. This preview window was different from when I was working on it this afternoon.
Okay, you got the script. There is also this in the process.
They're just in the processes now too.
Yes, try that. At least it's on mine. I got both,
Okay.
but it is a different look to it though.
There it is. Yeah, okay. That's what I'm familiar with right here. So this is what the process looks like. It's a lot to kind of to get used to here.
There's a lot of dials there.
Yeah, a lot of dials.
So this is the example image right here that we'll kind of work through, and I'll show you how I do my stretching. So open up a preview. So up until this point here, I've done, like I explained, the SBC noise and blur exterminator. I do use the STF as a visual so I can see what I'm doing. And then I killed that to start working with the GHS stretch. Let's see here. So one thing to know, you gotta, with this image, all your data is pushed directly to the left side there, so you're not going to be able to see it across the graph. So you have to zoom all the way in to visualize where all your data is. And this is the data that you're going to begin to stretch. And from the videos that I've watched, to get your basic stretch done, you want to find this gray area. This is kind of where all your data is meeting in the middle. So with this is just going to be narrowband. So I just have the oxygen and the hydrogen, which you can see with the blue and the red. If you're using RGB, then you're going to see all those colors. And depending on where they intercept, you'll see your yellows and greens. So from the videos I've watched, you want to set your symmetry points kind of in the middle of that gray spot right there. And the symmetry point is where, when you start doing the stretch, that's that very specific point on the curve that you're going to be manipulating. Once you set that, you want to hit send to SP. That's going to send it down to this transformation part right here. As you can see with the symmetry point, that's that value right there, that yellow line. Now the other two tools that we're going to be using are the stretch factor and the local intensity. The stretch factor is essentially taking your data and stretching it across your graph. And the local intensity is how strong that stretch is going to be. So if you increase this local intensity all the way up to, let's say 10, it's going to be a very aggressive initial stretch. Whereas you have it down here, maybe close to 1, it's going to be a very subtle, but you're able to do a more refined and specific stretch of those darks, highlights, or midtones. So
you do the local intensity first?
So my process, I do a pretty heavy stretch here with the local intensity first, usually about 9 to 10. And then you start to stretch out your data. I'm going to zoom back out. And with my initial stretch, I want to take my data to about that halfway point to the last third of that first column there that you can see in the graph, just until I can begin to see my data over here on my preview screen. And then you want to apply that to your image. When you apply it to the image, you have to reset, or else it's going to apply the same thing and it looks completely blown out. So reset the image. And now this is where you start to, for me at least, is where I start to kind of pick out the different parts of my image that I specifically want to target. So let's say I want to get some of this hydrogen right here. As you can see, as I'm clicking and holding on my image, you can see that yellow line on the graph there. That's where that symmetry point is. That's the data that you will be stretching. So that's going to be some of the highlights here. You can go up into your darks, and you can see that symmetry point moving all over the place depending on what you're selecting. So always send to SP. And then I start off with like a pretty heavy stretch of 10. I usually bring it down to about a 4 or 5 right in there, and then start to mess with that stretch factor. And you can kind of see how it starts to bring out those highlights. And one of the thing with this process is you don't want to do a huge, big stretch at first. It's a very iterative process, or else you're just going to, your image is going to do all sorts of funky things if you start doing these big, heavy stretches all at once. So I just do very small stretches, kind of, everyone's going to have a different taste. What they like is going to be a little different. Your data sets from person to person are even going to be different. So with that local intensity, you can kind of see how, so I've got it at a 4.9 right now. This red curve right here, it's just like a nice subtle curve. If I were to increase that local intensity right here, you can kind of see how that curve starts to get a little steeper. And so that's a more aggressive change to your data. So I have that. So go there, we'll apply it. And then we'll reset it, and you just keep on doing the same thing over and over again until you get the image that you like or what you visualize. And sometimes I even use that STF function down here as to get kind of a visual or a baseline of the image I'm trying to work towards. So send to SP, and then I'm just going to do a bit of a subtle kind of 1.7 there. And you can really start to bring out some of those highlights. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the gist of my workflow there. There are all sorts of different tools that you can. So I'm working under the Generalized Hyperbolic right here. Another one that I do use is this linear. Let me reset that. And that allows you to set your black point so you don't begin to clip over here. And from what I've seen, a very handy way to do that is, so right here with your low clip, you delete that last zero there, you put a 1, and that is as black as your image can be without clipping those blacks. Obviously that's too black, so then you take this black point slider and you bring it back towards the lights here until you kind of get to a point that you like with your black. So like if I go over here, that's starting to get too light, a little washed out. So you just want to find that kind of happy medium between too light or too dark. So maybe something kind of right there.
So what's the significance of the last one there?
So when you put with the low clip right here, when you put a 1, that is the blackest your image could be without clipping the blacks.
Okay.
So that's all that is, just so,
okay.
Yeah, just so you're not clipping anything. If you go back to the generalized hyperbolic stretch here too, you can protect your highlights if you start to stretch these out too much. That if you zoom in, I don't know if I have my data stretched all the way over there. I kind of got a little bit of data through here. I'm not even close to the highlights here, but you can set this limit right here to protect the highlights down at the bottom. It'll move your highlight point just so you're not clipping any of your highlights in your image too, which is another way to protect some of that data. And that is pretty much all I've done, or how I've been working with my images. You can get very focused, and there's so many different points within your image that you can select. So that's actually how I was able to get some of that fainter oxygen within the crescent nebula to pop more, is that I was able to select some of that in there, bring it out. Then after I'm done with my GHS stretch, I'll use color masks or the game script to kind of more finally select those colors to bring them out more, use some saturation curves and all that. So yeah.
And this was an HOO?
Yeah, this was an HOO image here. I do a lot of narrowband stuff. I have not actually, I haven't tested it on any of my RGBs, like my M31. I haven't attempted that one quite yet. I've just been doing a lot of my nebulosities.
I think you're gonna find RGB is way different.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Now, how many iterations do you typically do, Devin?
Honestly, I don't have a select number of iterations that I do. It's just kind of until, to my eye, my image starts to look good.
Mm-hmm. So is it like 5, 10, 30 roughly?
Oof, I would say for that one, it's probably under 10 iterations.
Okay.
Because I feel like if you start to do too much, it's going to ruin the image. I feel I like to have more of a subtle, just make those contrasts pop a little more. I don't know if you can see it on my images here. There was a video that I was watching actually last night where you could tell that, so within these dark clouds here, you can kind of see there's like some dark areas, there's some light areas. you can specifically select like the lighter and the darks and separate those a little more, and it gives that more depth to your image compared to, you know, maybe something with an STF where those lights and darks, they're not as stressed or separated as much, and it kind of looks more flat.
Right.
So you pick a symmetry point,
Mhm.
and then you do iterative stretch of that. Then
Yeah.
you'll pick another point in a different color, different area.
Yeah. So based on what you're trying to get from your image, if you find that your highlights aren't popping enough or aren't showing through enough, you could select a highlight on your image. That's where that symmetry point would be, wherever you select. And then if you do a low local intensity and start to stretch that out, it's going to specifically target those highlights more than if you did a very aggressive local intensity, where like the local intensity kind of is a generalized stretch, more similar to the STF. Whereas once you start to get lower and lower with that local intensity, it's more specific to the tones, or, you know, the mid-tones, highlights, and darks that you're selecting.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
So
interesting.
I've got another image here, my Veil Nebula that I was working on. So you can really kind of tell that, especially like right in here, you can see
It's right
how
behind
those highlights. Pardon?
It's behind Brett.
Oh.
Look at the what is that called?
Sorry.
The witch's
Oh
room.
yeah, is that the witch, right? The witch's
Yeah.
room in there or something? Yeah.
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 Wow.
So you can tell there's a pretty big difference, especially when you're starting to look down here. I find in the darks, this little kind of like red area right here, the faint stuff, it kind of comes out a lot more. And down here with the oxygen too, compared to over on this image, it seems to kind of, I guess, blend more with the background than your GHS stretch. Because again, when you're doing that STF, it is just kind of stretching all your data at once. Whereas with the GHS, you get to specifically select those points in your image that you're stretching.
Wow. That really pops
Yeah.
in comparison.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah,
It allows you to get more contrast and keeping
it really does.
darks and highlights together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can definitely go over this again here just as another example.
Is this something I have to install separately? Because I don't seem to have it in my Pixinsight.
Yeah, I think there's you have to go into your, is it the repository there? You have to get the download link and put it into that repository, and then when it's inside, it'll install.
Yeah, it is free.
Yep. Yeah, it's a free.
And you do want the process rather than the script. The process, I think,
Yes.
is better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I went to the wrong one there. Definitely want the process over the script. I think the script is the old version.
Yes.
So that's what I've been using. I wonder if that's been my problem.
Yeah, yeah. So again, here, I zoom in. I select my initial symmetry point kind of in the middle of that gray there. I'll send it to my SP, and then I'll do a pretty aggressive local intensity upwards around 10. Lots of people too, you can get very focused on those numbers. These numbers that I'm using, there's no whim to them. It's just something that I've developed. So I do an aggressive stretch here. Oh, I should zoom out. Bring my data kind of towards the 50% to the last third of that initial column. So I'm starting to be able to see all my nebulosity through here. I'm going to apply it.
How did you protect the darks there? Did you put that 0.01 or?
You know, I actually have not done that yet. So that actually reminds me, I did watch a video. Shoot, one sec here. Let me restart that. So that one. So that. Okay, so we'll kill that. Okay, so I saw a video here where someone hit this log button up here. It changes, I don't know, honestly, I don't know what it changes, but it's a different value right here, and it kind of shows all your data. And he was saying that you could even select, if you go into linear, you can select a point between like the last little bit of your data here and back here to set as your black point. So if I set my black point right there, I apply that to my image. And then that's also another way to set it. I don't know. There's a couple different methods that you could use. I prefer the one where I just go into the linear. I take out that 0, and that kind of shows me the darkest it could be, and then I adjust it to my liking. I find it is a lot easier. It gives me more control of kind of my data, my image there. So if you kind of select that middle there, send to SP. Okay, I'll apply that. I did see that there's you can also do that arc sign stretch in here for your stars. I haven't quite figured that one out. When I'm doing my workflow, after I'm done the GHS, I'll actually separate my stars, and then I'll use the arc sign stretch process. I find that a lot easier. I haven't quite looked into how to do it with this yet. Okay, so now let's do maybe some of the blues right here and send to SP. And so even just that right there already is starting to really make that nebulosity really pop out of that black. And then from here, it's honestly just messing around with it. If you selected a point, let's say some of those reds right there, you can even, your symmetry point right here, you can even take that and move it around if you wanted to. So let's say I did this local stretch here and start to do that. I could take that symmetry point and move it around, and it's going to change what it's affecting. So there's tons of different ways to kind of mess around with these values here and change it to your liking.
That can come in handy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I find when I'm using my cursor and actually selecting specific points on my image, it just allows me to get a little more refined than just kind of moving the slider back and forth and seeing what it does to my image.
Mm-hmm.
So even just something like that. So how many iterations was that? That was 3?
3. Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, it honestly doesn't take much before you really start to get an image that you like. So me, probably I'd spend a little more time here trying to get some of this Boehner stuff to pop a little more. But that's kind of, I think that's kind of the gist of this process here.
Well, Devin, would you see any advantage of stripping the stars out and focusing on the nebulosity itself rather than having to worry about both?
You know, I'm sure I'm sure that probably wouldn't be a bad idea to mess around with it like that. I guess.
Like get your stars and your image out of whack with maybe the stretch levels are off.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Because if you separate before you do this total stretch, yeah, you will be stretching your nebulosity differently compared to your stars when you're using arc sign. So maybe it's probably a better way to do it is do your initial stretch like this with your stars included, separate it, and then you can fine tune what you want to do with your stars. So if you want to get rid of the magenta or make them more vibrant, whatever you like.
Right.
Yeah.
You think it just mess with the continuity of the whole image?
It could, yeah, maybe. I haven't actually tried to do it that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a good thought.
I have another question about the protect the shadows again. You added you did the point, or you put the one at the end, but I see the one goes away. I guess it stays there while you're
So low clip 1.
you
Yeah, so once you set that low clip,
and
because
that's what the little red line, okay, that's what the red line is, the low clip.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
so
So that's under the linear, the low clip.
yeah, that goes under the linear. Yeah, I don't tend to stretch my data too aggressively, so I haven't found the need to really use this protect highlights. I guess it might depend on your data set and how bright everything is. But for me, my targets tend to stay kind of down
Wait
down
till
on
you
that
play with your
left-hand side.
Andromeda. Yeah, wait till you play with your Andromeda.
Yeah, yeah, Andromeda is going to be totally different.
You're gonna have some issues in that core.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so that black point that I do, I usually tend to do that towards the end of my stretching just to kind of get a final overall like black level that I like. I don't like super dark. I kind of, it's almost like a little bit of a, would you say like a gray kind of washed out tone to it.
Mhm.
Feels a little better to me compared to a super black or super light.
Is there any chance you have the unstretched version of your M31? That we can just take and stretch it?
Let me look at my files here and
That'd be a fun
see.
exercise.
You got a good fast computer there.
Tell me that during web-based pre-processing.
What, you're messing around with full frame sensor data. It's quick.
Actually, combine starless. I've got all the separate lights. I don't have a combined one. So these are all, honestly, after I'm done processing my images, I delete all those intermediate files because they take up a lot of space.
Mhm.
I can, maybe for the next meeting, I'll work through this stuff again here and get a combined image put together, because it'll take my laptop too long. Once I start stacking and putting things together is when my laptop really slows down. So I can get one put together, and maybe for the next meeting we can see if we can work through that. Would that work?
Yeah, or maybe, yeah, another alternatives. Adam Block does kind of just the reverse of what you do. I don't know whether you noticed when you watch his videos, he actually stretches first, and then he does the local.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you did a great job there. And one thing that I did just before the meeting here, I downloaded one of his files that he uses for teaching. We could as a group go through it and see how we can apply your teachings there and see what we come out with. You want to try that, or is everybody sick of
that'd be great.
tonight?
Is it a Galaxy?
The Whirlpool Galaxy, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions I can answer?
It's excellent.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
Fascinating.
okay.
I have to go through the YouTube video again and watch it again.
Yeah. I can after the meeting tonight, I can post some of the YouTube videos that I was watching.
That would be good. That would really be
Yeah,
good.
for me as a kind of like beginner intermediate, it was a lot easier to understand some of those other YouTube videos compared to the kind of the technicalities of Adam Block.
You'll have to stop sharing what you have to do if you're.
Okay. I don't know how to get back to my screen here.
I think that's at the top rather than the bottom.
Oh, stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, let me try. I think I saved this. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Oh, yeah. He gave two examples. One was M42 and then M. Well, okay, they're both tough. I mean, let me tell you, because you were talking about the bright areas that you don't, makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
Because this, to me, I mean, I played around with the bit. I mean, let me go back to the beginning, and then maybe we, together, we'll do that, and go clear to the beginning. Okay, so this is the original. I mean, this is just pretend this is the luminance of an LRGB,
Yep.
and to me, this gets to be. I mean, it's just different than the nebulosity, because you got this really bright core. So what we do, we get the preview, and so again, let me just step in, Devin, when you see that I'm going the wrong way. But what he did, he first said, this is all sky values. I mean, this, and what he did, he took he did a preview, made a little preview, and it's exactly the same curve. It's everything to the right is where all the good stuff is out here. And so it isn't real critical where you do the initial stretch point. I mean, the symmetry.
That does remind me of a point. In a lot of these videos I was watching, people tend to suggest when you're seeing that initial symmetry point to offset it more to the right. And that's probably why.
Well, the issue, I would think, is you want to stay in the sky. See, the sky values aren't zero. They're 0.07 to 0.12 or 1.5, something like that. And so he just said that anywhere in this range here is about right. So we sent it to the symmetry point calculation. And again, what he did, I mean, it's just opposite of what you did. And who knows what's right? I think the result is what's right. But he would take, let me minimize this. He would take this and stretch it, and see it's starting to show up. And see how the red curve is clear to the top. And then he would do this to adjust it and adjust it down. See how you start to get more contrasty. You're muted, Devin. I thought you were.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I see that there.
And so, I mean, it's just a different approach than he did.
Right.
But the thing you got to protecting, and Alan, what you asked about, one thing is, we'll go do the second stretch, and you ask about the protecting the highlights. This is where it really gets goofy on, or you really have to spend time to protect the highlights. You do a preview here on when you're doing LRGB, you don't want any of the values to be more than 0.8, because as you combine with the RGB, and that's 0.8 right on it. It doesn't saturate right. So you got to be really careful on that. So what he did, again, he did the logarithmic, and he talks about being out of here someplace and as a symmetry point, and then start stretching it some more. And what he wants to do is stretch it and then start looking at all these dust lanes, the detailed dust lanes. That to me is where you start getting really the fine tuning. And Alan, here's what you start bringing this down. See how it's darkening it and contrasting it. And
Right. Yes, I see that.
and so that's what that's for. You start protecting. You want to keep this 0.8. That's actually probably go too high. And these are just rules of thumb that Adam talks about. And so he will go through several iterations on this and reset it here. And we get a preview. And he wants to get, what you did, you did some points in your nebulosity. Well, he'll pick that point. You want to contrast it. So you start doing this, and then you really got to play with that to start bringing out the contrast. And I'm obviously not good enough to emulate Adam right now. But and you go back and forth with all of these adjustments, and you see it's starting to get more contrasty on the dust lanes. And so that it's a different, it's a different image than the nebulosity. So the M42 is even harder. So what I did, I put these on Keys drive, Mesfits drive. So both of these, this one and the M42, which you can try next, are available for you just to play with.
All right. I have a Pixinsight question for you about the little preview plane frame you're looking at.
Well, wait, here?
Yes. How did you zoom in on that when you're in the preview frame?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I usually start with a full screen. There's right over here, the left-hand side. See that? That is a preview.
Okay. Then you zoom. Okay. How'd you zoom in?
Well, it just does it automatically. Okay. Let's just start all over here. Okay. There's the image. Here's the preview.
Yes.
Okay. Then hit the plus. That gets the full screen.
Okay.
And then over here is the select preview. And so I just take the area and it zooms in for you.
Oh,
Yeah, you have to draw your
preview.
box.
You have to draw your
That's the
box.
key.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a zoom in and then zoom back out.
Yeah.
I have been trying to figure out how to do
Gotcha.
that for so long.
Okay.
Glad.
Well, we have a learning for tonight. We got a lot of Devin learnings. Now we got a Merrill learning.
Would that work for like previewing a process? Like, when you hit the circle and you want to zoom in on that?
Yeah, that's what this is.
Yeah, well, this is actually a real-time preview. And then you go back right here. This brings it back down to where
I
it
didn't know
was.
you could do that. That's
Yeah,
Okay.
well,
That helps with the
Game changer.
processing too. Like if you're
Yes.
preview, it's not going to do the whole window. It's going to do just the little box that you highlighted. So
and it's
okay.
it's the real time. It's the real-time version of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it makes it, to me, it makes it really easy to see what you're doing. And what you want to do on illuminance for an RGB, you want to get your illuminance the absolute best you can. Again, that's what the detail is going to show up in. And so you want to get this really good, lots of contrast. He went hitting the wrong thing. He really wanted well, I can't get it right here. He really wanted to focus on this dust here, and that's tough. So we're going to do that as the symmetry point. Okay, we got some good stuff right there by doing that, using the same settings that I did last time. And so let's just apply it and see what it does to the whole image. The issue comes that you start losing some of this dust out here. So it's really an iterative process that you don't want to lose the dust in the title, whatever they're called, title arms. But so it is clearly an iterative process. You go back and forth, but it's the same thing Devin did. It's just that you start using more of these protections, because the core is so bright and this stuff is so faint. Okay, so let's try.
Yeah, those galaxies are another beast. I've been petrified to go back to my M31 because it took me 3 weeks to figure out how to do it the first time.
If you have an RGB image, would you pull out the luminance, extract the luminance to do this on? Or
Well,
Not if you had a
I'm sure.
monocam.
I guess you could.
I've done that a little bit. So when I was going back and reprocessing a lot of my old RGB images, I did that very thing. I didn't use GHS, but I used the easy tools to basically mess with the luminance and then add it back in later, and it made a big difference.
Yeah,
So I think it's worth playing with.
That makes lots of sense because you can do your Borex and on the luminance and but this what he had on what we just saw in M51 was that is the luminance portion of the image he took. I mean, they had the luminance R, G, and B.
Okay.
Now this one here is one of the most difficult things that people tackle. And what this is M42, and it because of the huge difference in brightness. And so here we go. We'll pick the point right about here. Sure, I will. There, I am. Move it over. Okay, symmetry point. See, the value down here is 0.0007. I mean, that's, very, very dim. And so it doesn't really matter where you are too much inside that curve, unless you're just too far right. Okay, so again, what his teachings would, you start stretching it. Take it off this 250. You start stretching it, and you see it's starting to come out. But see how bright that core is?
Mhm.
And this really gets tough. And then you start bringing the curve back down. And I didn't get a chance to, I actually didn't get a chance to watch his video on this one. I did watch the M51, at least part of it. And I did play around with it for a few minutes on my own. And this is tough.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna guess that we're gonna need to be somewhere in this frame out here someplace and just keep trying. And we'll stretch a little bit more. And now the core is starting to get really bright. Oh, wait, I forgot to send the set point down there. And you want to protect that core by bringing it down. And then you start doing the local intensity.
And you're using a different graph than Devin was using, correct?
I noticed that you switched over to the log to protect those highlights.
Yeah, it just gives you a different, it's the same data. It's the logarithmic versus linear, that's all. And so you can turn it off if that helps you. I mean, that may be more familiar. Again, the data that you're using, that you're dealing with, that's really important is out here on this right-hand side. And so I didn't spend, the Running Man here is still really dim. You got to spend a lot of time. It's like Devin said, you take a point and you stretch it and you go back and forth, back and forth. The issue in something that's such a high dynamic range, when you do one thing, it really affects the rest. And so you got to really go back and forth. So anyway, these are both in the shared folder on Keith's Mesfits drive. So there'll be good exercises to play with just to learn. So
Okay, great.
That's usually when I give up and go do Photoshop layer blending. So
One thing that would be really helpful for us, Brent, would be, I've never used the easy tools. You got an example that you could do a quick run through on that one?
I don't, but maybe Devin, if you still have your stuff up, I'm curious if we just run it on your Crescent and you can compare it against the STF and what you did with the GHS.
Yeah.
And I use it like a sledgehammer. So like I don't mess with a lot of the settings. So you can probably just use the default option and see what it spits out.
Okay.
Do you iterate, Brett?
Maybe once or twice, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
Like I said, the GHS, the iterations and kind of tweaking it and everything, to me, right now at least, it's real easy for me to mess it up. So it's like I get it where I'm like, I don't know where in the process I lost it, but I just I don't know. I haven't spent as much time as I need to. So that's why I just quickly use this and then kind of get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the History Explorer is for. You can go back in time. I make so many mistakes. I use the History Explorer all the time.
All right. How do I get to this?
So
Oh.
it is under, where is it? Process? No, I'm sorry, script.
Scripts.
Script, easy processing suite, easy soft stretch.
All right.
There you go. So that's just default values, but just hit run easy soft stretch down at the bottom and you can see what it spits out here.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
That wasn't a bad first, just no thinking hit.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's the initial one with STF. I made a clone of this one and we got this from the Easy Suite, which I think is, I guess, kind of similar here. I made mine a little brighter, but that's pretty good.
You know, the problem is
it's
they're all-
a good, easy, quick way to get started while you're learning GHS. I think GHS is definitely the right way to do it. But you know, if you're in a pinch and just trying to get a product out that easy, yeah, I mean, it's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one's the one? Is the clone? Is that the easy stretch?
So this is the Easy Stretch right here, and it was a clone from the STF.
Okay. The highlighted one is the easy stretch.
Yep, that's Easy Stretch.
It actually has more saturation than all of them.
Yep.
but not as much detail.
Yeah, that's the key. You can get in there and still kind of draw that piece out, but
Mhm.
I usually will do that after the stretch, whereas I guess with GHS you're doing it whilst you're stretching.
Yeah. I wonder, could you take this Easy Stretch one and still mess with it in GHS?
Oh, and why
See
not?
why not? Yeah.
Yeah, it's you keep stretching till the end of time, I bet.
I'm sure.
When you get done there, Devin, I'm going to go. Let me have the control. We're going to try the M42 on the easy stretch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the Easy Suite, is that, how do you install that in Pixinsight? Or is that separate?
So it's got a link in the repository. I can see if I can find it and put it in the
Just
chat.
Google it, just Google
Yeah.
it. And, okay, I can do
But
it.
it's easy and it's free, hence the name.
Easy and it's free.
Easy processing suite.
Easy processing suite.
Soft stretch. Let's see how it does with the core and the initial.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure it'll handle
See, the
it.
core is really
Yeah.
really blown out.
We'll zoom in there. Let's look at how bad it is.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's-
it's gone.
You can see the values are 0.99. And
Yeah,
it's,
okay.
Yeah, that's one you're not getting away without doing the GHS or something. So,
yeah,
but like when I do my when I do my M42, I still do this. I'll turn it down, but that's where I am pulling it out and doing the Photoshop layers just as my quick merge and kind of blend them together.
Let me try.
If you can change the settings in the easy processing
Yes.
stretch too, maybe that will.
With M42, I don't know that I buy it. That
Okay,
one's just,
okay.
you know, the range on that one, like Meryl said, the odds of getting that one right automatically are pretty slim. But yeah, there's settings you can mess with.
See, that was over
Oh,
stretch.
yeah.
Hey, go,
With it-
can you
with
undo
the
that and go
default.
back? Your I
With
don't
it,
know, was that your default settings right? Yours look higher than mine were.
well, yeah. Let me go back. I didn't change anything, so.
I'm wondering if you messed with it once upon, it'll remember what you did previously.
It's the first time I
There's
ever,
let me look.
first time I ever touched it.
Is there a reset? There's a reset something in there, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, what's there we go. Hold on. Let me reset this if I can. No, it's
Oh, open up your easy. Let's just look real quick. And there's a button that says reset. I'm just curious what it
reset
does.
stretch setting. Okay. Okay, I did a reset
That
stretch
update.
setting, and then
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's still too much for the default here. So you just have to start turning it down.
yeah.
But yeah,
Okay. Well,
I find it's the default works really well on the nebulas, but again, like we were saying earlier, the galaxies are different beasts.
and I think to some degree, I mean, it really depends what your focal length of the scope, what you take. As you probably notice, I do lots of galaxies and such, and so. Okay, great. This is helpful. Okay, anything else on stretching tonight? Anybody?
It's still hard. Okay. Meryl.
Oh, yeah, it's actually fun. You gotta remember,
That's right.
it is fun. One thing, let's talk about next month, because Morris Butcher has got a lot of energy to he's been developing some outlines for a beginner toolbox. Someone who is brand new at this, what do they need to learn in terms of equipment and software? So, and he really does have the energy to make the presentation. And there's a lot of experts in this group here that can add to his toolbox. So what do you guys think? Good topic?
Yeah, it's always a good topic.
I vote for that.
Les, you
That's a
could
good
probably-
topic for expert.
I just downloaded Pixinsight today, so for the
Oh,
first
there you go.
time. So, yeah.
Good luck.
Well, and there's some other ones that, Devin, someday when we have time, we'll do your M31s, world's best M31.
It's spectacular.
But things like, the guiding, I've heard a lot of conversations about that with PhD. Somebody wanted to talk about the rotators in general and ASI rotator. And then just conversations on the RC tools, which we're all, I think, getting used to, but they're just fabulous.
With that guiding too, I wouldn't mind talking about the different numbers and parameters that we use to do the guiding. Because I don't understand a lot of that stuff. I just have it set to defaults, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
You mean on PhD or just guiding in general?
I guess I'm an ASI error user, but I think the graphs and the numbers should be the same between the two.
What do we want to do? Do you want to do the ASI guiding? I mean, a lot of people here in this group use the ASI, right?
I use PhD.
Who used PhD? I'm sorry.
That was me, Brent.
Oh, yeah, because you're using Nina, right?
Yep.
Yeah, if you're on a PC, you're using PhD.
But I think the principles Or the same, exactly the same.
Well, ASIR takes complexity out and just kind of makes it easier to roll with, and you don't there's fewer settings.
Yep.
But I've got some old graybeards who say it's every bit as good as him when he was pushing PhD 2 to the max. He just said it was an eye opener for him that there's so much complexity. You wonder if there's diminishing returns. So the ASIR went on the route of let's just make this as simple as possible and don't give a whole lot of control.
How does ASIR go after the meridian flip? How's that work?
It doesn't.
Yeah, it does it automatically. It's mount dependent. If your mount has to be able to.
Yeah, but it finds a different guide star.
Yeah, it really doesn't care. It just goes finds it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it just starts moving. It actually finds multiple stars. They were the first to implement the multi-star guiding.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but they get all the code from PhD.
Mhm.
It's open source, so they grabbed it, they refined it, and simplified it. And so basically, you have 2 steps. You calibrate with it, and you get a good calibration. You only want about 5. Devin, you only want about 5 steps during that calibration. If you're at 20, you're going to have a bad night.
Yeah.
And then they give you a few aggression controls, and that's it.
I think
Yeah, I
I think
guess
that's
that's the thing that's confusing me. The aggression controls and
yeah.
the other one that's like, I think it's set at 200 milliseconds for 3 different values, and I have no idea what that's for.
Yeah, those were the numbers I was talking about too, that I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. Because I know the one night I was having really bad guiding and I did a bunch of searching online. I had to change, I think it was like 2000 milliseconds or something like that. And then I had to switch it down to, I don't know if it's 1700, and that's what I'm currently at. But there was some calculation that was online to figure out what it should be.
Mhm.
I don't understand any of that stuff.
Okay, why don't we start off next month with Morris? I don't think we're going to be it could be a long topic, but I'm guessing no. And maybe if we have time, that we get into guiding. And if we don't, get time for guiding, we'll do it the following month.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Any other topics before we say goodnight?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Devin.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
I appreciate it.
I hope that was okay.
No, you did
Thanks,
great.
it was great. Thanks.
Lots of learning here.
Yep.
All right. Well,
All right, see ya.
I'm going to start shutting down here with the stop recording. And
I see the somewhat